Okay, then. Well, welcome. This is Black History Conversations. We've had so many sessions now, we can't keep track of the number, but it's well over 150. And today we're welcoming colleagues to join us, especially Hilary Brown, the chair of the South Wales Jamaica Society. Now, we usually start fairly formally so that we can just get the formal bits sorted out, or we do, and I can find the PowerPoint, which seems to have disappeared. So just talk amongst yourselves while I find that. Um, so where were we? Yes, I was busy getting this organised earlier. This isn't our actual official logo, but it does for now. Okay, so here we are, Black History Conversations. Greetings to you all. And just to say that Black History Conversations this season, we've taken quite a different approach, experimenting with different ways of talking about and discussing the stories of Black history, looking at resources being created, the research and the activities going on currently to explore what others around the world are doing to share insights, information about Black history in different countries, as well as the shared history of European colonisation. And we're exploring approaches to reparations. So connecting stories, restoring voices and building understanding. All good stuff. Right, so that's what we're about there. Now, Garrick, I don't know if you want to read the acknowledgement this time.
You caught me eating. That's why I put my camera up. I was just having
Oh,
a
I'm so
sandwich.
sorry.
Yeah,
Do
that's okay.
you want me to read it then?
Yeah, I still got something in my mouth, so
Yeah.
go
So
ahead.
we this was something that Jackie you suggested to us is that we had an acknowledgement at the beginning of every session of Black History Conversations. So we acknowledge the injustice of the actions taken by the British and other European countries that invaded and took possession of the islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Asia, Australia, and many other parts of the world in the centuries of colonisation and ongoing exploitation. We acknowledge that this has resulted in the destruction and destabilisation of so many nations, peoples, and cultures. So, thank you, Jackie. We've had various different ways of presenting this on the slides, and we're always interested in comments, and so we can make sure this is as relevant as possible. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice. So this is a reflection, and I'll read this as well this time. Um, in Jamaica, it's normal to start with a prayer at the beginning of every meeting. And because we're a multi-faith, non-faith group, maybe we decided to just have a reflection for Black History Conversations. So in our world, facing uncertainty, conflict and greater need, we pause to breathe, to listen and to be present with one another. We hold our hearts in our hearts, those affected by hardship, by storms, and we're still thinking about this, which is why Hilary's with us. Those affected by aggression and loss, by injustice and inequality. And we give thanks for the strength of the communities that continue to care, rebuild, and hope. As we meet today, guide our words and our actions. Help us to work with humility, wisdom, and compassion, and to honour the bonds of friendship that link us. May our shared efforts be rooted in respect, solidarity, and peace. Okay, so certainly difficult times at the moment. Now, because I'm in Australia, we do an acknowledgement of country before every session, which is where we got the idea for our acknowledgement. So I'm acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'm delighted to say that I'm off to see my friend who lives in Healesville, and she's a member of the Wurundjeri people. So we're going there on Monday. So this was just to remind us of last week when we talked about the battle that went on up in Lancashire. I can't
Bomber
just remember.
Bridge. Bomber Bridge.
Thank you, Garrick. The Battle of Bamber Bridge, and we heard all about the research that's been going on to remember this. And this remarkable gentleman, what's his name,
Uh,
Garrick?
um, Mr. Smith, but Clinton Smith from
Clinton.
Preston Black History Group.
Yeah, so Clinton talked to us with his grandson sitting on his knee the whole time, wriggling and carrying on. But he's done the most amazing amount of work, and this was a really fascinating story. So Google the Battle of Bamber Bridge if you don't know that story. Okay, and we have to remember, this is my last slide, but remember that next week it's the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. So we're going this event is put on by the United Nations, but there's different activities going on all around, so that's useful. Right, so now that I've done the formalities, so Hilary, welcome back. Gosh, you've
Thank you.
been
Thank you, Liz.
over in Jamaica for how long?
On this occasion, I was there for 8 weeks.
Wow. And you're going to let us know just what you were doing because you were with us in Jamaica when we had to make the awful decision to fly back to the UK, having only been there 3 days. So you decided to stay on, and then you stayed in Jamaica until towards Christmas time, didn't you?
I
Came
did,
back
yes.
and then to Wales, and then you went out again. So tell us what it was like when you stayed over those after we left and the hurricane hit the
Okay, well,
west.
first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to tell this tale. It is something that I think is still so at the forefront of my mind. I'm planning, what we can do now again to go back and help because the need is just so great there still. John Wynne Jones, really good to see you again. Garrett, good to see you again. Um, and as Liz said, yes, I was in Jamaica when the hurricane hit. And as everybody, we weren't really sure where it was going to hit. We were, given information that it was going to be the south and the east of the island, and it ended up being the west and the north of the island. And so it kind of like felt when the hurricane did actually hit, it felt like the Wizard of Oz. It felt like, I was in my room having been told everybody being told to stay in the bathroom because there was a less chance of any windows being broken, to stay in the bathroom. And I did. And, all of a sudden there was dreadful, dreadful howling winds. And obviously things flying around in the air, crashing and landing on all kinds of surfaces. It was really quite frightening. But after that subsided, I went outside and, I don't know how many of you will remember the swimming pool that was, directly outside of my room. I've taken a lot of photographs and videos, and there was a tree in the swimming pool. And the water, an hour before was blue, and now it was very murky like sludge. And so that just reminded me of, how delicate really life is and the environment is, and how it can change in the blink of an eye, how everything can change in the blink of an eye. And so, those of you that know me know, I'm a doer. I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll assess something and just get things done. And I contacted a colleague of mine who is Jamaican, who does an awful lot of excellent work in Jamaica. Um, and I asked him if he was on the island because he spends his time between Philadelphia and Jamaica. And he was. The hurricane hit us on Tuesday. I contacted him Tuesday evening. And I agreed to travel back to Kingston as quickly as I possibly could, depending on, when the roads would be open, enabling me to get onto the highway and get down to Kingston, because I just wanted to be able to, first of all, assess the damage and then just try and do, whatever I could to help. And, it's kind of, it kind of frustrates me when people say that the government weren't as prepared as they should have been. And the reality is, who can prepare for a Category 5 hurricane? Who can come? It's absolutely impossible. And so we were kind of like isolated in Montego Bay for about a day and a half. And it was really shocking to see, power lines down and stores not open and, trees all over the road. People couldn't move. Some places were flooded. But on the Thursday evening, I was able to toil a path to the highway and make my way down to the highway to meet my colleague. And we actually met in the Pegasus Hotel because, you can go in there, you can sit in the reception, you can access Wi-Fi. And
This
I
is
was
in Kingston. Is this
sorry, in
sorry,
Kingston, yes.
yeah.
And I was immediately drawn to the fact that there were, although we were in the tail end of a hurricane, I saw lots and lots of people coming in. The airports had been closed, so I didn't think that there was anybody new able to get onto the island. And I saw, 4 people come in, 10 people come in, 30 people come in, 60 people come in, and in no time at all, there was over 200 people in the Pegasus Hotel. Obviously, all landed, with their suitcases and everything. And, being the type of person that I am, I observed to see, who they were, and I quickly identified who the leader of this group were. And I went up and introduced myself to him. And I thanked him for, being on the island, assuming that he'd come to help, and he agreed that he had. And he was Chef Jose from World Kitchen, who had landed with a couple of hundred volunteers who were going in their own jets and their own planes, bringing their own equipment and bringing their own vehicles to build kitchens around Jamaica so they could feed people. And, I remember in 2010 when there was the dreadful earthquake in Haiti. And I remember the various organizations going down to Haiti to, provide a relief effort. I was hugely involved with that. But I also sadly remember the amount of devastation that many of those organizations left when they were accused of having inappropriate relationships with women and, various child abuse. So I really put this man on the spot and asked him to confirm that they vetted their volunteers and that there would be processes in place to make sure that their volunteers were present and correct every day, and what was the mechanism for reporting volunteers who were absent. I mean, I know the criticisms of Haiti, where, some very high profile organizations took volunteers out there and volunteers disappeared for 4 and 5 and 6 days. whilst they were out doing their terrible deeds. So I just wanted to put him on notice that yes, we're in a disaster and we are eternally grateful for any help, but we'd also be watching them. I must say, I didn't realise who he was. I didn't realise that he runs one of probably the best disaster, but I didn't care who he was. I wanted to do what I could do to protect Jamaica and protect our people, vulnerable people in Jamaica. And so I watched when they went to Montego Bay. That was one of the first places that they went to, and they built a kitchen and they ended up doing, I think it was like 30,000 meals, hot meals, 3 times a day. So, I really can't emphasize strongly enough the huge benefits of volunteering and voluntary work. We cannot think that the statutory organisations can pick up and be the only organisations involved in disaster relief. We really have a responsibility to, roll up our sleeves in a paid or voluntary capacity and do what we can. And so I was invited by Chef Jose to attend their first briefing the very next day. I was unable to because I'd already made plans to get out to St. Elizabeth, starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. Because by that time, there was lots of video, there was lots of footage of the devastation there. And so my colleague, myself, and 2 other individuals traveled to St. Elizabeth, and it was harrowing. It was harrowing. It was like a movie. The roads had come apart. We had to travel on 2 fields and, just to get from A to B. We saw many, many animals, dead animals, floating, in flooded areas. We saw people at the roadside desperately reaching out to anybody who was able to pass to beg for help to go in to their homes, to move zinc roofs, to move rubble, to try to find loved ones. It was traumatic. And so we traveled as far as we possibly could, planning to get our hands on some resources to get back as quickly as we could. And we spent that weekend going to all of the areas. I'm quite well connected in Jamaica, and I went to, Tivoli Gardens, I went to Seaview Gardens, I went to Cockburn Pen, I went to lots of different areas and gathered together young people, and kind of like convince them that it really is everyone's responsibility to reach out and try to do what they could for their fellow countrymen and women. And so I was delighted when on the Monday we were able to travel with about 8 cars leaving from Kingston, full of food, and we managed to pick another 4 cars of young people up in Mandeville along the way. We'd been communicating with them over the weekend, and these young people went out and bought whatever they could. I spent an awful lot of money on food, and we packed in a very orderly way. All of the bags were identical. I'm glad I did the initial drive through because it made me realize that people just didn't have anywhere to store food or to cook food. So that's why we didn't buy, great big sacks. We bought in each bag a pound of rice, a bag of sugar, a bag of flour, a bag of salt, things that could be kept in tins because people had no storage. So we bought lots of mackerel, sardines, tuna, whatever we could. And we distributed on the first occasion to people in Westmoreland. I'd arranged with the MP for the area in Eastern Westmoreland to meet him there. And we agreed to meet at the, you've probably heard of the product, the Baba Roots factory.
Mhm.
And it just so happened that that day, the helicopter had, the army helicopter had dropped lots of food supplies there. So the people from the locality of Darlaston, including the MP, the councillor, local people, were helping the military unload the helicopter and store the food products in the factory of the Baba Roots factory. And I stood outside and was having a conversation with the son of Baba Roots, who's now taken over the business. And whilst I was talking to him, I could hear the rain had stopped by that time, but I could hear some dripping, some drip, 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 drip. And I asked him, "Oh, you've got a drip." And I was literally stood outside the factory talking to him, and he was like 2 steps in the factory, and I was outside the factory. And he beckoned me to go inside. And when I went inside and looked up, I saw the sky. His whole roof and every window in his factory had been smashed and damaged. And there was one corner that still had zinc on the, and he gave that over to the community to store, to enable them to store the food that had been donated by the government. And it really drove it home to me that every section of society, every section of society had been affected by this hurricane, whether it was individuals, whether it was families, whether it was schools, whether it was businesses. And I take that example of the Baba Roots factory because that factory in that small community had employed over 100 people. And now every one of those 100 people were without jobs. So the effect that that had on that small community was really, really catastrophic. And so, you know, he showed me the damage to the production line, the damage to the machinery. They had no electricity, and it was really, really devastating. And so we planned to return there, but we planned to do 3 convoys a week, because what people, you know, perhaps don't realize is the shopping that you take and distribute, the food items, the necessary food items, they don't drop out of the sky. You have to go to the store, you have to select the items, you have to pack the items into the hundreds and hundreds of bags, because of course, when people got to learn and hear about the work that we were doing, visiting the communities, and every single community that we visited, we were the first persons, the first people, the first groups to visit those communities. And we got to become, you know, great friends with the people in the supermarket in Kingston who would go out of their way to give us staff members. They gave us discounts. They sourced all of the items in boxes from their warehouses. They helped us pack. So the goodwill in Jamaica was absolutely amazing. Even with people that had not been affected, you know, they were feeling it and doing whatever they could to help. In all, I was in Jamaica for about 6 or 7 weeks at that time. And we managed to roll out 3 times a week our relief aid initiative that saw no less than 500 bags of shopping being given out, no less than 500 bags of shopping being given out every convoy. And so, you know, a bunch of volunteers, who just did their little bit. I like to believe we made quite a difference, not only in helping people by delivering food items, but actually just reminding young people who weren't affected that it really was their responsibility to try to get involved. And, I had to take into consideration that what some of these young men were seeing was quite traumatic. And I remember taking an artist with me who I won't name. He's a well-known artist. And I remember taking him with me on one of the trips that we were making to Darlaston, where we on the very first day, where we saw a family sat in their front garden. And I don't know who's on my Facebook, but if you have a look, you'll see some of the videos that I put up there. And it was a family of two women and about 4 or 5 children, and I just pulled over. And I started to talk to the one lady, and I said, have you seen anybody, and what was your damage? And her house was literally behind her, flat on the floor, flat on the floor. They were sleeping in the front garden. And of course, the hurricane had taken all of the leaves off the trees as well. So they didn't really have anywhere to shelter even. And I looked behind the lady, and I saw another lady sat down on a chair with what I thought was dirty washing on her lap. And I called her over, and she was so traumatized. I had to call her 3 or 4 times, and she eventually came over, and carrying this bag of clothes or towels or whatever it was. And when I was talking to her, she wasn't able to answer me. She was just looking into my face. And I was saying to her, oh, you've done so well. You survived this horrible, horrible hurricane. And I saw the clothes moving. And when I looked, there was a newborn baby in there.
Oh.
A newborn baby. And I couldn't believe it. And this is what devastated the artist, because he was stood next to me. And I just went into, well, I don't know what mode I went into, survival mode. I just grabbed the baby from her and I said, oh my goodness, what a clever woman you are, producing such a beautiful baby. How clever are you? And she started to smile. And I said, oh, we've brought some nappies. We haven't brought any clothes. We've brought some feminine, hygiene products. And she just said, Miss, please, I just need water. My baby is 2 weeks old and I haven't washed for 5 days. And I turned to the artist and he was crying. So I had to sit him in the car, and I had to get some of the youngsters, some of the young men, to lift some crates of water that we'd taken with us to give to the lady with, the bits that we had, and deodorant and toothbrush and toothpaste, and tell her, look, leave me here. I'm babysitting. I'm fine. I'm bonding with my new godchild. You go down and sort yourself out. And she did, and she went down behind a tree to wash herself and to sort herself out. And we've kind of like adopted that family, because every time, we ran out a convoy in that area, we called in and we encouraged people to help them clear the debris. And the little girl had one of the daughters of one of the women had an 8th birthday party 3 weeks after we first met her. And I reached out to people in Wales and I said, please, send some funds. We want to do a proper birthday party for this little girl. And we did. I bought everything I possibly could that had the brightest pinks and blues and yellows and all of the E's in there I could imagine, but we just wanted fun for that little girl that day. So I was there until just before Christmas when I was forced to return home because, John, you should remember, Garrick, you should remember, I have a bad knee. I have a problem with my knee, and I had a consultant's appointment, and I ended up having a steroid injection. So I came home for that, and as quickly as I could return, I did return, and I've returned home now on Monday. But I was there for 8 weeks, doing much of the same, um, delivering food.
Hillary, take a pause because this is quite overwhelming what you're telling us, and there may be questions that people want to ask or points that they want to raise, just to clarify or just to recognize what you did was utterly amazing. And you posted on Facebook, so I knew what you were doing. We were back in Wales and we were doing our best. John, in particular, was doing a lot of stuff, and Garrick was rallying round as well, Jackie also, so that we were able to send funds. And we sent our funds quickly to the Ministry of Education in Clarendon, who went to the shops like you, did the same as you to put together the care packages and the grocery packages, and then they staff from the schools drove out to Westmoreland, I think they went to,
Yeah.
so that all the money we sent was immediately spent on providing resources. Obviously, if there was anyone in Clarendon, they got help and support, but essentially most of it went, and that was a way of helping them help themselves, if you like, as Jamaicans. And I heard that from several sources that really people really rallied round to help one another, and that now is the way that disaster recovery has to be about. We know all about it here in Australia, that communities have to help themselves, but you also need that external help. Is there anybody else who wants to say anything to Hillary at this moment in time?
Yeah. Hey, Liz, this is Jackie.
Lovely.
Hi. So just thinking about what you were saying, Hillary, because I remember I was in Haiti on day 3 after the earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of naively, I just jumped on a plane. They needed nurses there. And while there were a lot of people were doing a lot of good work, I was shocked at what I saw. You know, as a nurse down there, I saw people down there abusing drugs.
Absolutely.
You know, the medications that were sent to help the people, there were people just, you know, taking the drugs and shooting themselves up.
Absolutely.
There were doctors down there doing surgeries that they had no right doing, you
Yep.
know, and you know, no anesthesia. You know, I know it was a, you know, it was a bad situation, but there was things going on that were just not they were totally unsupervised.
Absolutely.
People stealing, just coming
Yep.
and stealing, raiding, you know, so
Yep.
it was almost as if, yes, we wanted to help, but at the same time, um, you know, there were people who had to be flown in to supervise the children because children were being abducted. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of good work being done, but yeah, it's almost as if you really have to look at the dark side of it because a
Oh,
lot of people take
absolutely.
advantage of those situations. And then my other thought on what you've been saying is that yes, because even here, you know, in America, we've realized, people are realizing that this thing about, you know, just I'm an island, I do my own thing, it's all about me. We realize you've got to have a community. You've got to have
Yes.
somebody looking out for you. If you go into a hospital, you've got to have somebody there advocating for you. You cannot just be out there. If you're elderly, you've got to have somebody there, you know, making sure you're not taken advantage of. And I think that the community model, I mean, maybe, you know, the positive to this is Jamaica is rediscovering, you know, what community means and how they need to have each other's back. Because, you know, in situations where you're expecting somebody to come in, oftentimes they're not coming in to help. And as I said, the ones that are helping, the organizations that are doing a great job, you know, definitely support those. You know.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, You are exactly right. I remember Haiti very, very well. Um, and to me, it felt as if it was a lot of people coming down to experiment. That's how I felt they treated Haiti. There was no real infrastructure building. It was an attitude of a savior coming in to help all these poor black folk, which of course I kicked against. I didn't quite get that in Jamaica, and I think it's because um, such wide areas were affected, but not the whole of the island. So there were people who were able to come together and support their fellow country men and women. And I would just say that because I went into so many of our communities in Kingston where I work with so many artists and others that I've left now, and they've continued to try to capacity build in their own communities to teach their young people that community doesn't have boundaries or borders. Community is about, unity. Yeah, it's the coming together in unity. And so one of the last things that I did whilst I was in Trenchtown was I did a pensioners breakfast where we got the young people from the community to cook and host and serve and entertain the pensioners in Trenchtown. And that community push, that volunteering initiative came out of the need to reach out after Melissa. So, yes, Melissa has caused a huge amount of devastation, but it's also refocused and recalibrated people's thoughts about, you know, you can't just sit there sometimes and expect the government to take up the mantle. You have to, put your hand out and say, I'm here to help you. Garrick, did you want to say something?
Yes, Hilary. Such a difficult one, but a couple of points. I'm glad this is being recorded because people can actually replay the video and get a sense of, what has happened. I mean, while we were here in the UK, we were actually keeping a track of what's happening on videos being posted, etc., and also media reports. We know that several high profile celebrities came out to Jamaica to assist. We know Usain Bolt was there. We know White Yardie was there. Lots of people from the UK came out. Jack, you probably know more from America who came out and gave their time and resources during that period. What you're describing, you know, listening and reading something is not the same as being in the heart of what's happening, like what you've just depicted with the baby. Just seeing that, um, you you can't imagine that would be a situation, and I'm sure that can be multiplied, over and over. We were getting weekly report, Hilary, from Barrington. We were having online meetings, so we were really getting weekly report what's happening on the ground, particular with the schools and the families, etc. So we had a really good idea, what the situation is, and also Barrington was feeding back to us how the resources will be used and the families that would benefit, etc. And, we saw videos of a team of people going into Westmoreland, into Black River, to actually do work, clean up and help the people. We saw all of that. But none of that will compare to what you have actually witnessed yourself, while you were there. That is so traumatic. And even talking about it, I get very, very emotional about it, because the island has never experienced anything like this. I remember Hurricane Gilbert. I had to go to Jamaica when my grandmother house was damaged. Uh, and we thought that was a massive disaster then, Gilbert. Uh, and since Gilbert, we've had subsequent disaster, but nothing compare. There is nothing to measure. None of the Caribbean islands have had anything that we could measure and say, oh, this. Completely new. And I also saw, videos of people from Dominica coming into Jamaica to help with the electric supplies and the repairs and so forth. All that stuff. People don't know what was happening on the ground. Although other Caribbean islands were affected, not to the extent that Jamaica was affected. So those islands was able to assist in whatever way they could, and that's about community coming together and and supporting each other.
Absolutely, Garrick. And people from many countries in the world came to help. Ghana, for instance, sent soldiers
Yes, I
who were
remember.
there, day and night, doing a more physical role by literally clearing debris. Because all of the power lines were down. Not only were the power lines down, the poles were across the road. People couldn't travel from one community to the next. It really was absolutely devastating. And what I did, every community we went into, I looked for the police, I looked for soldiers, we exchanged numbers. I would tell them when I was coming back. So, they would identify families for us. So by the time we went back, we kind of like knew where we were going. I remember very early on, and I've got the message still on my phone. I had a message from a soldier who told me not to travel to this particular place. He said it is really bad there. People are robbing cars. He said gunmen are holding up cars and stealing food and mobile phones from people. He said he got into a situation, but it was a good job that he had on a uniform and his colleagues were able to assist him. And he urged me and warned me not to go to a particular area. And I said, okay, I hear what you're saying, but that is exactly the area that I'm going to. Because any man who's going to hold up a car with a gun is hungry. So I'm going to feed him and then I'm going to recruit him. And so that's exactly what I did. I went to the very, very area where there had been some desperation because the roads were blocked. It was Holland Bamboo. The roads were blocked and aid could not physically get through. And, we saw some people along the way that perhaps would have intimidated, many people. But, each time we went, we had 10, 12, 14, on one occasion, 22 cars with us. And we stopped and we spoke to those very people. We spoke to those very people who, quite quickly started to come around and say, "Oh, miss, there is an old lady, but we haven't seen her, you know, and she lives over there and nobody's been able to see her. Oh, there's a family down there with 7 children and a grandmother." So, you know, we didn't see any of the horrible situations that people were very quick to jump on and try to report. All we saw was an awful lot of love, an awful lot of help, and an awful lot of gratitude for, you know, those of us that were there trying to help as much as we possibly could.
So it's just amazing what you've done, and it kind of galvanizes me up again. We've we're now in a position where we're about Garrick's going to book the flights for a group to go over. We've got 8 people going over. And we've spoken to Barrington and the others, and we've got Ivor here with us. So we've been following what's been going on and the change in the approach to the recovery efforts, but we know that there's still a need. So we had an idea that we might be able to take some extra cases with us, but that isn't going to work for the TUI flights. So we've got to think again about how and what we can do, so that we can, when we go over, we're not just going over as, I mean, I know they want tourists back and so that we add to the economy, but we want to also do some more. So we're kind of on a, I would say, Garrick, we're on a real sort of balance between
Yes.
making sure that the visit achieves our aims, because this has been an enormous amount of money that the Welsh government entrusted us with to help people understand, and we really need to. This is our last visit out, and we've got one person coming back to Wales, so we really need to make it very clear that we can do something as well, supportive, as well as being there to do our learning and activities. So we'll discussing that at our sessions on a Saturday morning when we're getting
Yeah.
there, I think.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
say.
ultimately, again, we're taking advice from our colleagues in Clarendon May Pen as to what the situation is on the ground. Um, and a really good story that probably Ivor might want to relate. So, you know, in Pennant, for the Christmas period, they were able to, you know, to do something for the community.
Mm.
You know, for like a Christmas, you know, a Christmas event, and that was about providing some resources in order to get those things, because what Barrington relayed to us is the trauma that the children and the families were experiencing, and still, I mean, still experiencing at this time. So that was something nice that was done in Pennant, just because you know, those children. I mean, I remember reading something. Oh, some parts of Jamaica, Christmas is cancelled.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Because how can you celebrate Christmas in the heart of a disaster? See? So that was a wide thing. But the community of Pennant was able to, you know, to come together and have something. And I don't know, but every time I talk about the children and the community, um, because people don't really understand the the way community works in those small villages, community, how it works. And you know, I was born in the country, so I know about the country. I'm not a city person, so I know about survival in a country where you grow your own, you rely on the land, everything. You've got your animals, you got your agriculture, and when that disappears, when there is nothing like that, then you've got nothing. That is a reality.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I would say, Liz, in response to, what you're focusing on in trying to get to Jamaica and take some help down there, is the cost of living down there is now absolutely astronomical. We were buying bags of food, and for every 50 bags we were buying, we were spending between £491 and 470, £497. Yeah. That same bag of food when we returned, and don't forget, I returned with an artist, a Jamaican Welsh artist from Wales, and another person who'd done a considerable amount of fundraising in Wales to buy some items. That same bag of food, exactly the same items, was now £835. So I would say, and as I said, we did some work with the elders in Trenchtown, and we also did a youth day in Trenchtown. And for me, it was, I just happened to hear of a group of 20 people coming down from Wales. He'd reached out to me to ask me if he could make a donation. Somebody that I know, a musician from Wales, asked me if he could make a donation to the initiative that I was doing. And I said, well, £100 gets you nothing in Jamaica now. So I requested that he go out and buy £100 worth of items in the UK, pens and pencils for school children, pencil cases, rulers, rubbers, all of the things that we know school children need. And I said, you can share it around the 20 people that's coming down, and I know you're already packed, but I'm sure you can squeeze a pencil case full of those school things in each of your suitcases. And that's exactly what they did, because I know I priced it out in Jamaica. If we'd have purchased those same items, you'd have got nothing. The cost of living is so bad. So my strong advice is, if you can take an extra suitcase, do so. If you can't, send a barrel.
Yeah,
Send
that's what
a
we're thinking
barrel.
of doing. So we're talking about getting 2 barrels. We haven't had a chance to discuss this, John, with anyone else, but barrels is the way that things are transported to Jamaica very often. So 2 barrels, and what I've done is spoken to a colleague, somebody I know in Montego Bay. And so 1 barrel is going to go to him, because I had a one-to-one conversation with him, and he was explaining what he was doing and what the needs are still like, and he's somebody who works with the youth, and so I feel really confident with that. So 1 barrel will go there, and 1 barrel will go to our colleagues in Clarendon, because the challenges that the families have got in Clarendon, and now that the crops were so devastated, and it's taking time for families to get back on their feet again. And so it's these families that need, backpacks for the school children, or like, as you say, pens and pencils and all those sorts of things. So Barrington's going to give us some indication of what we can purchase, and we're just getting rolling again now, so that Hilary and Bangor, with what we call the One World Cafe, which is in the main Penryn Hall, which you came to, on a Saturday morning. And I'm going to be suggesting, Garrick and John, that we use those as that as a collection point as well, that if we can get round to the schools, get information going out to the schools. So this week it went in the Bangor Eye, so this week's sort of getting going. Then next week we can have another article saying that we know we're collecting items, and we're going to have the problem again, Garrick, of where are we going to put them while we're waiting. But yeah, you can have a barrel in the back of your car, and John, I'm sure you'll be able to help us out to as well. But we need to talk it through more. But it's been we've not had the support that I thought we were going to get over the last couple of months, but we're going to really rally round and focus on it again. And it's totally understandable. People have got distracted, but I think the fact that you're explaining, and when I talked to Marcel in Marcel in Montego Bay, he was just telling me what the reality is like, and yeah, there are still people without power, and still so much need. So we'll rally round and do that. So on the screen here, we've got Ivor from Penance, who you know. We've got Jackie is coming out with us to be a part of the group. So Jackie, I'm sure you'll be collecting things and getting an extra suitcase organized or whatever. And
Yeah,
we'll
just let me have a list of what the type of things you need. Okay.
okay.
Mhm.
But I think it's a good point that rather than take the money to spend there, as much as we can to take things with us. So
Yeah, better value for the money.
Value for money,
Purchase here.
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll think it through. Well, gosh, you've really, I mean, you've talked mainly about the first time you went over, and I think the second time you went over, I mean, so many things have happened, and now you're back in South Wales. But I would suggest at the moment that we kind of have a pause now. And thank you for sharing what you've done so far, Hilary. And can I ask these conversations every Friday? At 1 o'clock, as we move
Yeah.
through, we're going to have different people coming in and telling us about different things because it's Black History conversations, but this is actually making history. This hurricane was a serious historical event. Nothing like this has devastated Jamaica before, and here in Australia, right in the north of Australia, the pointy bit, Queensland.
It was on the
They've
news this morning, Liz, about the
they've got a
storm. Yeah.
sighting, and it's not quite as powerful as the Jamaican one, but it's not hitting quite as densely populated areas.
Mm.
But all the same things. Yes, Hilary.
Can I just say something quickly? When we
Oh yeah.
were when we were there on the first occasion, but before I go into that, the second occasion was more of the same, but we were far better organized.
Yeah.
So, we did exactly the same things. We tried to visit different communities. I'm delighted that we managed to visit three of the maroon communities.
Oh,
And we
wonderful.
delivered aid to three of the maroon communities. We did a compound when we were there in the first instance. And I must say this, it's very important that I say this. All of the communities that we went into, we did not see any real organization. Yeah, because people were traumatized. They were trying to get to grips with the situation that they found themselves in, and there was no real community cohesion. We went to a Kongpong, and for the very first time, I saw coordination. Chief Richard Curry had done an amazing job. He had one central place where everybody who was donating took the goods to be donated. He recorded who was donating. He took everybody's contact numbers. Of course, he had a team of people working with him to do this. They itemized and listed all of our bags were the same. We dropped off hundreds of bags, but they were all exactly the same. He itemized everything that was in each of the bags, and what they told us was at a certain time every day, they sound the abeng,
Yeah.
and everybody in that community comes to that central point where their family unit, the makeup of their family unit is known, and they are provided goods to ensure that everybody in their family eats. And they tick off who has attended and who hasn't attended they then go out and visit. That was the first real community, entire voluntary initiative that I saw that was really making sure that everybody in the community was helped. And I was, delighted
And
with that.
if I can say, I think that needs both celebrating and sharing, because here in Australia, I'm saying we've we've had disasters. Nothing in our area quite on that scale. The disaster I was involved in was a relatively small area, physically small area, whereas in Jamaica it's like half the island. I mean, it's huge. But this thing about community coordination and what the Australian authorities are now encouraging is for communities to get their act together, to get their community groups going, because climate change is meaning that we are all around the world experiencing, um, you know, unforeseen challenges of all sorts. So I think that's really interesting. That's a really good example. And worldwide, places are sharing and saying, well, that was good. And I think people are very respectful, people I've talked to, about how well Jamaica managed, but also to know that there was, because the US is much nearer than Britain, that there was help there, and those people you talked about, the chef and his plane, and there was this sad disaster when one of the planes crashed, and one of the small planes, and lives were lost. But um, that support was there to respond as best as they
Absolutely.
could
And the
possible.
other thing I wanted to say is, we all know the saying, each one teach one.
Yeah.
And Hurricane Melissa really drove home to me how important those informal lessons are. Because, going back again to Haiti, I had initiated a shoebox project. I don't know whether you remember, Liz, a shoebox project, and I got lots of the schools in Barry here to ask their pupils who would be prepared to be part of a shoebox project. Didn't enforce it upon anybody because, of course, not all families can afford to be involved in such initiatives. But vast amounts of families signed up for it. And what they did was they got their children to fill a shoebox with little gifts. Because we've heard about, where Garrick said about the trauma. Yeah, the trauma affecting children is huge. And so I decided to do a shoebox project for Haiti, and the children filled the shoebox with little gifts. So if it was an 8-year-old girl, an 8-year-old girl would put in a shoebox what she would like as a gift. And, they filled them with pens and pencils and hair bobbles and toothbrushes and toothpaste and a pair of Manchester United socks and all kinds of things. And we sent down hundreds of shoe boxes to Haiti. And, because I worked with Haiti for a number of years after, we had lots of feedback on how that was really helping to heal the trauma for some children. And I was having a Zoom meeting with the organisation that I was working with this time whilst I was in Jamaica, called Give Back Jamaica. And their operational base is in America. And on one of the Zoom meetings, there was a teacher from, I believe she was in a school in the Bronx. And when I told her about Haiti, she thought it was an absolutely amazing idea. And she quickly got her principal behind her to do a shoebox project. And within 2 weeks, she delivered 200 shoeboxes, personally delivered 200 shoeboxes, flew down to Jamaica. So, these informal community initiatives that we garner, like the each one teach one, so vitally important, because as she said, she would never have thought of it. And it took little effort because, over 100 families said, yeah, that we'll get involved in this. And it made such a difference in Jamaica.
And it really can make a difference. So, with our Building Bridges of Friendship project, we have to keep on track with what we're doing, and it's wonderful. Ivor, are you able to talk? It's wonderful to have Ivor with us. Oh, Ivor, lovely.
Yes, Louise, here. Yes, I said this here as well. I put this here too.
Hi, everybody.
Always
Hiya.
wonderful,
Hi.
Ivor.
I,
That's lovely. So, you've heard about all the good works that Hillary's done,
Yes,
yes,
but
excellent
and I
work, excellent.
expected her to come here. I provide things for her, and she didn't show up. She was too busy.
So
you
I
have
apologize,
yeah,
but
you
I'll
gotta
to
keep.
soon be
do
back.
that.
That's all right.
So that's really lovely. So Ivor and Icent, you raised a really important point to Eureka at the parish uh, development committee, and that is that small business owners need help. So one of the things we've been following through is that for example, if I can, is it all right if I share your story? So you've got another property that usually you rent out, and that's a part of your income with your small business, and others have got other activities that they undertake, and they can't do it at the moment because of the challenges. So they're looking at um, small businesses. So Eureka knows what she's doing, and Gwennon has had a coffee morning, and she's going to be able to let you have something which will be a little way to go forward. But yeah, we're just thinking, and I know you're also trying to get the last pennies together to complete the work on the Church of God of Prophecy. So
Yeah,
we know got a lot of need. So we'll get galvanized and we'll get the schools on the go. And just to let you know, I don't think you perhaps are aware, John, I don't know, but we're having a head teacher principal from Effortfield Primary School. Jackie, I don't know if you remember when we had that lovely ice pod.
at the veranda. Yeah. Mm.
At the veranda, and they were one of the groups that performed for us. But she's going to come over, and she's going to be with us for 2 weeks, and I'm going to be back by then. And I think we need to organise a really important campaign. And if in those 2 weeks we can get to different schools, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, to share, help her learn about Wales, but to help our young people know, and also to be aware that there was a disaster, and can they, what can they do? So the schools will know that we're arriving. It'll all be booked in. So, maybe they'll have I don't know, a uniform less day or whatever they do to raise funds in schools. So I think that will help us to be able to get her around to the schools and also raise some funds that we can
And in
take.
particular, the schools that already been linked in, those 6 schools that we have links, that those are the target ones, isn't it, Liz?
Well, those are six, but if you think about it, we've got, I think there are 9 days that
Mm.
she'll be able to visit schools. I mean, that's a bit of a heavy target, but maybe if we go to 7 or 8 schools,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, and especially those six, but we also need to look at schools that have got the capacity to do a fundraiser, and also maybe to have a conference or something that the teachers can come to, and make that Saturday when she's with us a really, really important event at the One World Cafe, so that
yeah,
you know school teachers can come along and bring contributions and whatever, and we'll worry about how we're going to get them over to Jamaica. Let's
yeah.
get the stuff first.
Mhm.
Okay, have you
Yeah.
got any bright ideas, John?
No, and I just want to thank Hillary for what she's told us this afternoon. I think it's astounding what she saw, and it's also quite heartwarming to realize that a disaster like Melissa can do good as well in terms of making the community aware of of what they can pull together and be more efficient together as such. And I think that I'm in awe at what she's experienced, and I'm so grateful for her for um, telling us the story. Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah.
Because you've
At the
only
bottom
Thank
of
you,
just
my
John.
heart.
started, literally a few days ago. So thank you. Thank you, John. That was wonderful to say that. And Robert, do you want to say anything?
No, I think like other people, I'm just dumbstruck by the both by the scale of the catastrophe and the resilience of people in responding to it. It's just so impressive. Um, as you know, I'm one of my hobby interests is meteorology, and I've read quite a few technical accounts of that storm, and it was at a level that hasn't been seen in the Caribbean. Uh, I think, for decades. It is probably one of, if not the worst
Yeah.
storm ever recorded.
Mm.
And when you look at the pictures of the devastation, it's bad enough. But when you think that there are people actually in amongst that devastation who are suffering in all sorts of ways,
Mm.
um, it's just one doesn't quite, one feels one ought to do something. And yet, if you try and get involved, you can very often get in the way. When there are disasters, certainly in Britain, lots of well-meaning people turn up and they're just a nuisance.
Yeah.
So I guess the all that one can do really when faced with something like this in the Caribbean is to contribute money or goods or whatever.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Um,
So we're the North Wales Jamaica Society, Garrick and myself, and we've got Hilary from the South Wales Jamaica Society. And I know you galvanised a lot of folks in South Wales to be able to help you to carry out
yeah.
the activities you did. So, really, really brilliant that
I'm
that
just
you're able.
thinking, Liz. I'm just thinking what Robert just mentioned. So Robert, network and organization is Neurin. So again, any fundraising, anything you can do, just let us know, because with the One World on a Saturday morning, it
Yeah.
is an opportunity for people to come and talk to us in Penryn Hall between 10 and 12. Either bring something to us or come and have a conversation. We're also, Robert, looking to establish the One World Rotary membership, and we want new members for that. Particularly, we're targeting our younger people to get involved. We're linking into the university students. We Our target is to register a minimum of 8 to 10 new members for the One World, the Bangor One World, on a Saturday morning. So that is an opportunity where people can come and find out a little bit more what this is all about.
Because there's disaster after disaster and opportunity after opportunity to do things and provide service either in your local community or further afield. So that's what we're really looking at. So that's good, I think, Garrick, that You've highlighted that. Now, Ivor, is there anything else you want to catch up with me at the moment? Are you okay? Isint?
Yes, I'm here, Liz.
Good, good.
Only to say concerning the building, one of them, the building, they're working on it still. And
Yeah.
so for our function, which would be the 26th to the 29th, they have pushed it back because we still have not had the roof on.
Right.
And they were asking if there's anyone that can help with 500,000 to lend the church so that they could get the rest of material. They need a few more irons to complete the roof. So we are still looking forward to help you guys when you come, because that will be May.
Yes.
Will be May. So we are pushing back our function at the moment because also we're having some rain. So
I've
for
heard
them to
that.
go on
Yeah.
the roof, it's a bit
Yeah.
difficult for them to work on the roof when it's raining
Yeah.
or to do the irons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isint, I'm just going to ask John something. John, do you think that we could approach the churches in Bangor? You know, the group that brings all the churches together,
It's in.
and
There is a Churches Together group. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, the Churches Together group to see, because this is really problematical, because in Pennants, this Church of God of Prophecy building is absolutely key to being able to host all manner of activities, and we're planning to do something when we're there. So it would be great perhaps to consider that. Do you want me to draft something for you to share, John?
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
I mean, if we don't get anywhere, we
And
don't.
also, Liz, I'm just wondering, in the next article with the Bangor Eye, maybe we could focus on the Churches Together, fundraising.
Well, I think we can say that, and the schools, they're the
Yeah,
two.
those two. Yeah.
Because the
I
idea
think
of getting Rotary clubs to do something is something else that we following up. But Rotary clubs have something, they support shelter boxes and these tents and cooking equipment and all sorts of stuff that they provide. And I contacted the people who were dealing with the Jamaican disaster, because they've got shelter boxes ready all around the world for the next disaster. So I know Bangor Rotary gave funds towards that as well as to us. John?
Yeah, and I was just thinking, to Joe Blow in the street here, Melissa is in the distant past, really, and we need to bring
Mm.
it up, bring the situation that's currently in Jamaica
Yeah.
Yeah.
up to people's awareness, and that's the work that we should be doing in terms of how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
That there are so many difficult areas in the world at the moment. You talk about the Middle East, you talk about Ukraine, and we're all thinking and we're seeing that on our TVs and things like that. But I think that we also need to be raising awareness through things such as what Hillary has presented this afternoon. So that people think, oh, I thought Jamaica was recovered and it was okay.
Mm.
And there was an article in the Sunday Times about a month ago to saying that Jamaica's recovered. We're taking
Yeah.
tourists again.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't seem to be the picture that Hillary was giving.
No. And
And,
that's
and
only
I
one
think
part of
people
the
need to be
island.
aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also, John, when we've been there, maybe we can kind of also look at it, because it's about how we tell the community, and we've got this awful situation in Bangor where the two fire engines that were provided for Jamaica were turned down. So we don't want to go back down that route at all. But it's how do we tell the story? How do we get the word out? And about what we're doing? Because so I think if we sort of term it as a sort of an opportunity to part of the activities will be fact finding, seeing what else we can do as we build the bridges of friendship. What can we do into the future? So we'll
Yeah,
think about
because
that again.
there is a good news story here. That from the disaster, we've the community has come together, and that, but we also need to tell them that it's not all fine and dandy. It's not
No,
all back to where it was.
no, no.
The agriculture, for instance,
Yeah,
still needs attention, and there's a lot of stuff that needs addressing, and the people have virtually put the whole thing into the back of their minds and say, well, yeah, that was a bad hurricane, but it's over now, isn't it? And we can move on. And that's not the case. And I
no.
think we need to bring that to people's attention.
Right. Well, I'll do something, draft something for you, um, and you can add things, whatever you think. We can work on it together to go
Okay.
to the churches together, and then
Okay.
also, as I say, with the schools. So this has given us a chance to discuss also what we might be able to do. And Jackie will keep you well informed as well. So Ivor and Isint, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And as you can see, steps sometimes seem slow, but we, this
Get it.
is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining Black History Conversations.
Yes.
And I have to say, well, we might, are you around, Simon, at the moment?
Pardon me?
I'm just asking if
I
Simon's
am,
around.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Simon, I'm going to suggest that we just formally wrap the session up, finish the recording, and then I want to have a chat with Ivor and Isint about some of the heritage things we found out recently. So, Hilary, thank you so much. Hilary, is there anything else you want to add?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. It's I'm really glad that there's an international team still focused on the recovery of Jamaica. Whatever effort and whatever you can do to help will be hugely appreciated, I'm sure. And yeah, I was delighted to come and meet some new faces, link back with
Hilary,
some older faces.
lovely, yeah. And Hilary, it's wonderful that the South Wales Jamaica Society is going through a bit of a revival, and looking at how we can work together. And the same thing with the North Wales Jamaica Society. We might have a big mailing list, but we haven't got actually that many activists. So we need to get activists like you've got. So yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much then. And
No problem.
thank you then, Simon. If you can wrap up the recording, that